So why are we all here today? Thank you. I'm here because I was invited. You are here because you probably want to learn more about vaccines, I hope. I hope you left the rotten tomatoes outside, because I'm not wearing a red dress. It's going to show. But this is why we're here, really. I think the reason why they decided to do a focus on vaccines is because we've had a reemergence of vaccine-preventable diseases. And unless you've been living under a rock, I'm sure you've heard of these on the news. They've been everywhere. And the most prominent measles you've heard about lately is probably about measles. We've had over 1,000 cases, the most we've had since about 20 years ago. We're at risk of losing our status of measles elimination in the United States. And this is because of under-vaccination. So if you want to understand a little bit more about why are we here, you are in the right place. So this is not going to be your classical lecture, since I called it everything you want to know but were afraid to ask. You see 4 buckets up there. Are vaccines safe? Do vaccines work? What is in a vaccine? And vaccine hesitancy. You get to choose, because guess what? I could talk about this like forever. But I was told we have 45 minutes and we're 7 minutes in, so we probably have about 40 minutes. I can go really quickly through each of them and skip some slides, or we can go into more depth into some of them. So I would like to hear from the audience. Is there one topic here that you want to hear more than all of them?
Vaccine hesitancy.
All right. Anybody else?
What is a vaccine?
What is in a vaccine? All of them. Are they? Okay. So we're going to go through all of them. So I'm going to speak super fast. I'm not going to go through every slide because I think I have like 90 slides and there's no way. So please don't try to read them. I'm going to just give you the gist of each of them, and we're truly trying to get through all of them. But that means I'm going to have to skip some because I thought we were just going to go into depth. But I really want to share this. And actually I had like 16 buckets when I started doing this PowerPoint, and I realized we were not here till 3 o'clock in the morning. So let's get going. Okay, so let's start with, are vaccines safe? I think that's the most important topic because it relates to hesitancy and everything else. So how do we figure out if vaccines are safe? Number one, I want you to know that, are any of you on any medication right now? Please raise your hand. Any medication. Or have you ever taken Tylenol, aspirin, or anything over the counter? Yeah, pretty much everybody in here raised their hands. All those things have to go through FDA approval. All those things have to be regulated. So are vaccines, but guess what? Vaccines are more regulated than all those drugs because they are given to everyone. Every healthy population gets them. Your Lipitor and your other drug that you're taking is not. So actually vaccines are safer than all the drugs that you're currently taking. They go through phase 1, 2, and 3, which I'm not going to bore you with, but the first one is just small number of subjects, number 2 is bigger, 3 is biggest, and then FDA reviews the data, and if they think it's safe enough, they send it out into the public. And then there's phase 4. Phase 4 is super important because phase 4 is when we keep watching after the vaccine or drug is out there. Have you ever heard in the news things like, oh, we just had a new black spot warning about this drug because it causes blah, blah, blah? That's phase 4 monitoring. We do the same thing with vaccines. So in short, phase 4 is done by CDC's Immunization Safety Office, along with many other organizations around the world, but this is United States. And the most important one I want to talk to you about is the Vaccine Adverse Event Reporting System. People call it VAERS. Anybody, the public, doctors, lawyers, number one reported is lawyers, anyone can submit a case to VAERS. If you got flu vaccine and you go outside and somebody runs you over with a car, you can report that to VAERS and say, the vaccine caused me to be run over by a car. You can do that, and people do things like that. I'm not joking. I want you to understand how VAERS truly works. When I was a vaccine safety fellow for the CDC, that was my job, to review vaccine adverse events reported to VAERS. And there was one where it was anything that's important we reviewed. We didn't do all of them. We were officers of a category that reviewed deaths or special circumstance ones. So one was a death related to flu vaccine, and a mom said the baby got the flu vaccine and the baby died. And then he came back and everything was fine, but she reported it as a death. So she thought the baby died. She felt like the baby died, and the baby was fine. The baby left the office 5 minutes later, but she reported it as a death. So then you get a news clip that says 20 deaths reported on VAERS. Well, now you know one of those was not really a death. So I just want you to understand the problems with VAERS, but there's also benefits because a lot of us healthcare providers report there. So if we start noticing something, we're like, this happened, and then people in CDC start looking for trends. And we can tell apart the trends from the irregular things that happen. The trends are hypothesis-generating things, and so we can think, oh, is that true or not? Let's look. Then we can look in the vaccine safety data link. That is big organizations like Kaiser Permanente, for example, where you can compare people that are vaccinated against people that are not. And let's say that I think that vaccines cause a heart attack. I can compare this group of people with these people, same age, control for that stuff, and if it's the same amount of heart attacks, then it's not the vaccine. If this one has a lot more, then it was a vaccine. You can do that at a population level. You can't do that at an individual level. If I ask you and I ask you, you're going to swear to me that it was a vaccine because you got the vaccine and 2 days later you had it. But at an individual level, you don't have that vision. You need to do it big picture. Does that make sense? So that's what we do in phase 4. And then finally, CISA, which I worked there for 2 years, we do individual consultations for vaccine adverse events. So there is such a thing. If you ever have a concern, you can ask your doctor to submit a case to CISA. And it's CDC working with medical centers across the country. So that's how we keep an eye on vaccine safety in 30 seconds. That is the portal to VAERS. It's not hiding. That's something, as you will hear in the media, nobody knows about these things. Just Google VAERS in your phone right now. You are allowed to take them out. Google VAERS, and you can save it. It's right there. It's easy to find. And you can report yourself online, right there. Online report, or by paper if you don't want to do it online. You can fax it in. You can mail it, whatever you want. Now, the problem is, when we do these clinical trials, phase 1, 2, and 3, there are limitations to what we can do with a clinical trial. So anytime we release a drug or a vaccine, we're limited in how much knowledge we have about that product. So we have to do that phase 4 post-licensure safety evaluation. And I'm going to guide you through one real-life example so that that will make sense to you guys. This is the size of patients you need to follow in order to find a rare adverse event. So let's say that a seizure following influenza happens in 1 in 5,000. I would need to follow about 20,000 patients in a clinical trial to find one case. If you do a clinical trial with 20,000 patients and you find one seizure, are you going to say vaccines cause seizures? No. You kind of need that population level look, right? So if it's a rare event like 1 in 100,000, you need a lot more people. So you can see how it can get really pricey really quickly to make clinical trials with 500,000 people if you're looking for an adverse event that is 1 in 200,000. So, did the vaccine cause X? You need to think about 2 things. The vaccine, an adverse event following a vaccine may be temporally related to the vaccine, meaning you got the vaccine and something bad happened. You got the vaccine, you broke your leg. But now I'm going to say you got the vaccine, you got MS. Notice how different that sounds? I said the same thing. But when it happens to you, it feels like it's related. But if I say something random, you're like, of course that's not related. So it can be temporally related, and it can be causally related or not. I had a vaccine and I tripped. That is temporally related, but not causally related. Unless I had syncope, unless I passed out because the vaccine made me pass out, then it is related, not to the vaccine, but to the injection itself, which made me pass out. So now we have an event that was causally and temporally related. Okay? Does that make sense? Now, it's important to distinguish again whether you look at this at a population or an individual level. So it's really hard for anybody to tell you that X caused this in an individual level unless we have evidence in the past that's been published that says it. So for example, if we know that, I'm going to make something up, every time you get a vaccine your hair turns green, and it happens 10 days after vaccination on average, and you come into the office and you tell me, I don't know what happened, my hair is green, and I ask you, did you have a vaccine 2 days ago? And you say, yes. I'm like, I think that was caused by the vaccine. That makes sense. But if you come to me and you say, my hair is green, did you have a vaccine? Yeah, about a year ago. That's not it, because we know that it's about 10 days after. So we can use data from the literature to help us tell you if that is related or not. If there is no data in the literature, all bets are off, okay? But I want you to know that we are looking, and we're always looking, because there's VAERS, there's CISA, and there's VSD looking, always. That's our job. So does it work? Can you trust this thing? How many people here heard that we had that nasal vaccine and it got removed about a year or two ago? Yeah, why do you think we removed it? Just because we just didn't want to give you a nasal vaccine anymore? Because it wasn't as effective as the injectable. We look, and if we see that something's not working, we act. Then we fix the problem, and what did we say this year? Here it goes again. So you might think we're crazy. No, we're doing the right thing. It's like recalls in cars. This car is not working. Let's take that back and let's change the the tire or whatever. It's the same thing, but of course with vaccines, it's more about safety and efficacy, okay? So I'm gonna give you one quick example of a vaccine called RotaShield. It was the first vaccine for rotavirus. And it was 27 studies that were done to bring this vaccine out of 9 countries, 150 investigators at 320 sites, over 10,000 infants, hundreds of millions of dollars. It took 15 years. And after all that, we finally had the vaccine. Yay! So these are the 5 cases of intussusception that were detected during that study. 5. They did all their math, and they decided it may just be background rate. What does that mean? Background rate means there's a certain number of heart attacks that happen. If you introduce a new vaccine and somebody says I had a heart attack, you need to look if the rate has gone up in the population among those that got the vaccine, or if it's the same as the usual. If it's the same as the usual, you're just picking up the background rate. So they were thinking that might be just background rate, but let's keep an eye on it, just in case, because we saw 5. And so in order to know if it's background rate or not, guess what you need to know? The background rate of the disease. You need to know how often does intussusception happen in children. And then you can compare it to how often is it happening in children with the vaccine. So what happened is the vaccine was licensed, and then they put in the package insert, if you see intussusception, let us know, we're keeping an eye on this. FDA started looking for cases of intussusception among people that had the vaccine just in case, and we started looking at VAERS for early reports. Those are the kind of reports that will come to me if I was doing that then, because they're the special interest ones, okay? And guess what happened? 15 infants after 1.8 million doses. Do you remember how many patients were in that clinical trial? You can't do a clinical trial of 1.8 or we would never have vaccines available to us. People think that industry is greedy with vaccines. I'm sorry, guys. Industry may be greedy with your Lipitor, not with vaccines. How many vaccines does a child get in a lifetime versus your Lipitor that you take every day? Vaccines actually lose money. That's why we have a special system to protect them, because industry would walk away from them as fast as they could, because they do not make money from vaccines. They lose. Pediatricians lose too. They're there for public health. So this happened. Median age was 3 months. 13 of the cases followed the first dose. Ding, 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 ding. It's like the 10 days grand hair. Okay, it's after the first dose, not the second, not the third. It's after the second one. And when? 12 of those were within 1 week. Ding, ding, ding. Now we know. With this vaccine, if you have a case of intussusception, 3 months after dose 2, that was background rate. But you have it within 1 week after the first dose, that's vaccine related. There's your data. Does that make sense? So guess what happened next? We pulled it. So vaccination got suspended. We advised parents to promptly seek medical attention if they thought they had the signs or symptoms of intussusception, and to report all cases to VAERS. So that was the end of RotaShield. Happy story or sad story? Well, yeah, in my mind, thank you guys. Oh my God, I love this audience. It is a sad story because, well, it's a happy story in that the system worked. It picked up an adverse event, we reacted to it, and we removed the vaccine. We are keeping now 15 children out of 1 million safe from intussusception. Well, 12, because the other 3 were background rate. So it's about 12 in a million or so. But millions of children in the developing world were dying of rotavirus infection. And the moment the United States said, our children are not going to get that vaccine, the world said, if it's not safe enough for American children, it shouldn't be safe enough for any child. And rotavirus vaccine disappeared from the face of the earth. So this is my point. The system works to an extent that is too much in my mind. Now, if that had been deaths due to sudden infant death syndrome, of course we want to stop it early, of course. But what I'm trying to tell you is, if it had been sudden infant, we would have caught it. We would know, just like we picked this up. So it works. We have now 2 new vaccines. I'm not going to bore you with the details, but we can't decide whether intussusception is caused or not by the vaccine. One article says yes. The latest one that just got published like 2 days ago said no. So the rate is so low. We've been immunizing now for years, and we still can't tell because it's so close to the background rate. So in short, don't worry about it. It's safe, and we're still looking. So I'm going to skip that slide. And this is just something from the New York Times, also very recent, June 18th, showing you that vaccine injury claims are far and few in between. This is data from that data set that now you've learned. And the New York Times pulled that article. You might want to read it. It's an interesting read that shows you how safe vaccines are, how many millions and billions of doses around the world have been given, and how many adverse events have been reporting, showing you that the vaccines are safe. So that's just the National Vaccine Injury Compensation Program that was created to protect vaccines. When people started suing vaccine makers said, forget about it, this is not worth it, I'm not making any money on these things. So then the government stepped in because they said, if they don't make the vaccines for us, who's going to do it? And then we're going to have chaos, public health chaos in our hands with disease. So they designed this program, and 75 cents of each vaccine sold goes to this program. And it's basically completely opposite of what you know in the legal system. Vaccines are guilty until proven innocent. It's the opposite. So if you come in and you tell me the vaccine made me sneeze, we'll be like, okay, you got it. Now, if we have data that shows that vaccines cause sneezes and that sneezes disrupt your life, you will get your money, all expenses paid, and you're done. We don't even take you to court, nothing happens. You just get the money and you're done. But if you say, well, I don't know, again, I got pink hair instead of green, we're like, no, we know about the green hair, we don't know about the pink hair, so no, not that one. Although some people might argue it and still get compensated just because what they're trying to do is keep the vaccine supply intact. They rather compensate the 5 that come forward to protect the billions that need the vaccines. So read more about that if you want to. Again, you can just Google National Vaccine Injury Compensation Program and it'll show up. Now again, everybody will tell you we're trying to hide this information. Nobody knows about this obscure program. Guess what? It's a lie. I'm going to skip this for a second. This is the VIS, the Vaccine Information System that every parent that gets a vaccine, every child that gets a vaccine, every patient that gets a vaccine gets one of these little sheets of paper handed to them. And look what's right there. There's all the information right there. We're not hiding it, and you can Google it. So I rest my case. I'm going to go back to this just to say, try to compare what's best. Get the vaccine or get the vaccine-preventable disease. Let's use measles as an example. If you get measles, 1 out of 4 people will be hospitalized. 1 or 2 of every 1,000 will die. And there's this horrible thing that all infectious disease people like me, we're terrified of, called SSPE, so acute sclerosing panencephalitis. It occurs in 5 to 10 cases per million. It's rare, yes, but when it happens, it's devastating. If you get measles vaccine, claims of harm have been 1 to 2 claims for every million doses. How can you tell me that you rather get this than that? If we just compare the million to million. No. And I did not put everything that measles can cause. There's people here that know encephalitis, meningitis. I mean, I could stay here all night, but we don't have all night. And this is, again, more from that article about how many claims have been submitted, how many have been compensated, and how few claims compared to the billions of doses that have been administered around the world. So rest assured, vaccines are safe, and if they weren't, we would tell you. HPV. If you get HPV, more than 2 out of every 100,000 American women will die of cervical cancer. Die of cervical cancer. If you get HPV vaccine, there's 311 claims, fewer than half of those were compensated, and over this period of time, 112 million doses were given. What do you pick? If you know math. But I'll tell you in a second, actually we don't know math, that's why I said that. We are horrible at math, all of us. Then here, if cervical cancer alone did not scare you, cervical cancer is just the tip of the iceberg. There's also dysplasia and warts and all sorts of stuff that they need to cauterize your cervix, and then you could have premature birth or not even be able to have babies down the road. There's all sorts of stuff associated with that as well. And that's just females with cervical cancer. What about other cancers, like you've heard in the news, everybody gets it. It's in the news and people are trying to bring awareness to it. And you remember Michael Douglas, he had it too. He's a man. He had oropharyngeal cancer. And if the trend continues now, the number of male HPV-associated cancers is going to surpass the number of female cervical cancers by next year. And how many people here have heard problems with HPV vaccine and neighbors and friends and family that don't want to immunize? Tell them this. Now, that's my daughter getting her first dose of HPV vaccine. I'm not saying the kids are going to like it. I'm not saying the teens are going to like it. And guess what she did after that first dose? I kept telling me, give me a thumbs up so I can put it on my slides, because I always put it on my slides. And she didn't want to. So then she said, I will smile for you if you get it too. And I'm like, okay, bring it. She just froze. So that's us, both of us that's me getting a vaccine along with her. Back then, the vaccine was not recommended for women my age, and you know what? I don't care because I know it's safe. It may not be indicated for my age, but I knew it was safe, and if that means my daughter gets it, I didn't mind paying out of pocket for it, and I did it. And I know not everybody can do it, but guess what? Now, like a year after, it brought up the age group to 45, and now women my age can get it, and guess what? I'm ahead of the curve. Tetanus. Everybody here knows what tetanus is? Okay. So I don't need to explain to you what a horrible death you will have or what a horrible ICU stay you will have with tetanus, but you will. So trust me, the cost of the vaccine is about $150 compared to the $800,000 hospital stay that the last child in Oregon had. I'm very upset that they published that case in Oregon because we had one here in Kansas City and it didn't cross my mind to publish it. And we had that child at Children's Mercy for 3 months in the ICU. And that parent would still not immunize their child after we released them from the ICU, 3 months in the intensive care unit, and they still prefer to leave without a vaccine. Tetanus does not give you lifetime immunity because it's a toxin. So you need the vaccine or you're susceptible. And that child got it at home, that child might get it again. And we are all paying for that bill. So it is a public health problem. Okay, do vaccines work? Yes. Should we just move on to the next bucket? Do I need to convince you, really? I'll go super quick. Do you got polio, any of you? Measles, anyone? So thanks, science. Yes, they work. This is just numbers to show you they work. I'm going to go through them quick. This is just arrows showing you the disease incidence of HIV meningitis. And then when we introduce the vaccine, what happened to the disease. I'm going to do the same thing for rotavirus. Vaccine introduced, and then this is what's happened. These little spikes stay here because we have about 80% coverage for rotavirus. So when you don't reach the full potential, you can't eliminate it completely. But you can see, hopefully, all of you, how it's made a difference, right? Then let's go on to the next one, polio. You all had heard stories from your grandparents. There we have it. How many of you have seen polio in the past 2 weeks? Okay, do you remember stories from your grandparents in the summer and when polio would come, everybody would hide? And you have probably grandparents that had polio or have friends who had it. So this is not something I'm making up or industry's making up. This is real. We just forget our history. So why does polio matter now? Because that's one of the most common questions I have. Why should I give my child polio vaccine here if it doesn't exist anymore in the United States? Well, neither did measles, did it? And yet it's coming back. We're just a plane right away. As long as the disease is still out there, we can reintroduce it because people are under-immunizing. And we are so close to eliminating polio from the world. We eliminated smallpox. Yay, humans. Let's go after polio too, but that means we all need to stay immunized or we're going to reintroduce it. So this is what has happened. In case you didn't know about some successes, I want to leave you feeling happy. In 1998, there were 350 annual cases of wild poliovirus in 125 countries. Push forward to 2019, after the WHO committed to ending polio, we have only outbreaks of vaccine-derived poliovirus, which I'll explain to you guys in a second. But in 2019, we only had 33 cases in 2 countries. And the only 2 countries where we still have disease is Afghanistan and Pakistan. And the reason why we can't eliminate there is because we can't get to the patients because it's Afghanistan and Pakistan. And I don't know if you guys know how we caught Osama bin Laden. But it was somebody pretending to be WHO worker with polio vaccines, got into the house, gave vaccines to the children, identified them, he got caught. Then, the terrorists figured this out and they started shooting workers that were immunizing who were immunizers. So now it's really hard to keep immunization rates in those countries. We're this close, guys. Measles. Again, I don't need to tell you, we started the vaccine, it went down, and then there was a little blip. We recommended a second dose, because remember I told you we keep looking, not just at the diseases, at the vaccines, but at the diseases. If we notice there's a problem and we realize 5% of people that get the vaccine don't seroconvert, don't produce immunity, so you need to get a second dose. So we decided to give the second dose to everybody. And that's what that blip was about. And now you guys know that I've been talking about herd immunity or community immunity. You need a certain level of the population to be protected so that there's no transmission of the disease. And it's different for each disease. You can see for measles, it has to be about 94%. And you know that we're not there in the United States. That's why we have 1,000 cases now. And this is what happened in the UK. You can see the percentage of people given MMR vaccine dropped, and the number of cases, whoop, went up. This is what's happening in the United States right now as we speak, and the reason why you're seated there right now. So we have now an outbreak, as you know. As of June 13th, 1,000 cases in 28 states. And like I said, it's the greatest number of cases reported since 1992, and since measles was declared eliminated in 2000, which we may lose. So what does this have to do with vaccines? There were, I'm sure you've seen these in the news as well, that baby machine, 30 deaths in 8 years, so they recall them Fisher Price. And everybody's upset about it. It's been in the media, in the newspapers, USA Today, everywhere. 30 infant deaths in 10 years. And we made such a big deal, right? Okay, that's flu. Every year, about 100 to 200 pediatric deaths. I'm talking only about children. And we have something against it. Why aren't we making such a big deal about this then? If you're trying to compare apples to apples, let's do it then. Bring it. Show this data too. Be on the news around this cycle with vaccines. Because if we make such a fuss about 30 deaths over 8 years, I want you to make a big fuss about 80 deaths in 1 year. And we're not. So I'm going to skip that because I think I've convinced you vaccines work. So let's move on. So do you want to talk about what's in a vaccine or vaccine hesitancy? We have 10 minutes left, 12 minutes. Hesitancy. Vaccine hesitancy is nothing new, as you can see from this picture. Lovely picture. You can imagine this comes from the time of Jenner. The first vaccine that was invented by Jenner came from scratching pustules from a cow, cowpox. You remember hearing that milkmaids had beautiful faces, right? It's not because beautiful people decided to become milkmaids. It's because milkmaids would milk the cows. They would come in contact with cowpox. They would get a mild case of cowpox, and they would be cross-protected against smallpox. So they would have beautiful faces because they were not scarred by smallpox like everybody else. Thank you, yes. So that's what happened. That's why milkmaids were beautiful. So then when they started saying, oh my God, somebody figured that out, let's do that with everybody, not just milkmaids should benefit from this. Milkmaids were not happy. But they started doing that, and guess what happened? Oh my God, this is against God, this is against my will, we're gonna turn into cows, hoofs are gonna grow, and look at all these pictures of, all this stuff that people believed was gonna happen. Newsflash, we eliminated smallpox. Yes. So that was not true. Just like everything else you hear that's fake news, I'm sorry, is not true. I became a pediatrician to help children, not to harm them. It's very easy for parents to believe me when they come into the hospital with a bone infection or meningitis. Why would they think I'm like Jekyll, Mr. Hyde, and then all of a sudden I want to kill them with vaccines? No, I'm always there to help them, always. All doctors, most doctors, are in the same camp. I forgot that I'm being taped, most doctors. Okay, so I also want to point out that vaccine hesitancy is no joke. The WHO points out every year their 10 top threats to human health, and vaccine hesitancy made the list this year. Oh, yes. So that's why it's important to talk about it. Why are we seeing vaccine hesitancy now? Because most people don't understand that their children are at risk of vaccine-preventable diseases. Except, do you remember when we had that Ebola case that came into the United States? Do you remember the panic and how people wanted to line up for an Ebola vaccine? I'm like, dudes, we have influenza vaccine. Why isn't anybody lining up for that one? Like, again, I just showed you the data. So yes, we are one plane ride away from these diseases, and I'm proving it to you with measles. And it might happen with all the other ones if we let our guard down. They feel like they don't see the disease or it doesn't exist. My generation and generations below me have never seen polio. Why are they going to fear it? They've never seen really measles. We have 1,000 cases, but think about how many people live in the United States. We healthcare workers see it. You guys have not. Even though there's an outbreak, I'm sure none of you have seen measles here in the past month or two. A loss of a sense of urgency, and the fear of the vaccine is bigger than the fear of the disease. The vaccine is scary. It's a needle. What is in that little vial? That looks scary. I don't want that. And action is scarier than inaction. Giving something to my child might harm them, versus if I do nothing, then they'll be okay. That's the thought process. And pain, of course. People are afraid of pain. This is what we used to see in the 1950s, 1960s, congenital rubella and measles and iron lungs and lines of people to get immunized. This is what parents see now when they Google vaccines on the internet. So the truth is, I can't blame them. They're trying to do what's best for their child. They're trying to find information, and this is what they're finding. So if you want to protect your children, like parents do, this is not the way to do it. You should put a helmet on them, and there's better wrapping that you can use. So what I'm saying is they're trying to protect them, but they're actually not doing a very good job, because they're not doing a very good job researching the information. So what they do is they read scary stories. They're wondering, what do I do? Well, if I want to love them and protect them, I'm never going to inject them. There are no safe vaccines. Well, guess what? There are no safe cars. There are no safe Tylenols. There are no safe aspirins. There are no safe chairs. There are no safe anything. Welcome to planet Earth. This is a story that I like to tell really quickly. Cavemans would hear a noise, and one caveman would be like, oh my God, that sounds scary, I'm going to hide. And that caveman survived when that tiger came out. The other caveman was super brave and not afraid of anything, went out and got eaten alive. This is our great-great-great-great-great-grandparent. So we all come from that fear of the unknown, of, oh my God, I have to protect myself, I need to survive. We don't come from this. So a vaccine sounds scary. It's an unknown, it's in a little vial, it's an injection. It's natural to have these concerns. We just need to be a little bit more rational, understand that our fears are irrational. I'll give you some more examples of that. You know this, child. Yeah. So this is me, and that's her, and that's a baby. And when my daughter was that age, I was a vaccine safety fellow for the CDC when she was born. So trust me, I knew about vaccines. I knew about their safety. I knew about their adverse events. I knew everything. But I was also postpartum, tired, and the moment they came to pick her up to give her her vaccine, I was like, huh? Yes. Not because I was afraid of the vaccine. I didn't want anybody poking her brand new little thigh. Really. I had never anticipated I was going to feel that. I was afraid of letting somebody inject her. And I had a wonderful nurse who was like, she'll be okay, I'm going to take her to the other room so you don't have to watch anything. She took her, came back, she was still asleep, bundled, and I was like, that's it? Yeah. Okay. But if somebody had not helped me through that, I might have been one of those parents, well, no, but you know, that's how it starts. If somebody doesn't help you face your fears, I would have been afraid of the vaccine needle, but I would have forgotten the fact that hepatitis B vaccine protects against cancer. That's the most important benefit. And yes, you want to give it at birth, that's the best time to give it. This is where we're horrible at math, and I want to make sure you all understand this. Another story about my daughter. So I'm a single mom, and I need to put her in a plane once a month to go see her father in New Jersey. Every time I drop her at the airport to fly unaccompanied on a plane, you can imagine how I feel. My stomach comes up to my, like, here, and I stay like that until she lands. And I'm just like nervous watching the plane, following it, and I always feel like I don't want to put her on the plane because something's going to happen to her. Can you relate to that? Right? Yeah. Did I have that feeling driving to the airport? Or driving her to school? No. Where is she more likely to die? In the car. Yet I drive like nothing. That is an irrational fear, my friends. And that's why I'm aware of my irrational fear. I'm aware my great-great-great-grandfather was a caveman, and I'm aware I'm bad at math, Because if I was good at math, I wouldn't be afraid of her flying. Because I can see the math. But I understand my irrational feeling, and I fight it, and I put her on the plane. That's what we need to do. We just need to be kind to ourselves and understand we're going to feel afraid of it, but this is what's best for them. Okay? Same thing with dog bites. Everybody says, oh, little puppy. Nobody says, oh, little shark. Everybody's afraid of sharks. Yet, how many people here have been bitten by a shark? I always expect to see a hand go up, never. How many people have been bitten by a dog? Oh my God, look at that. But if I'd asked you early on, what are you afraid of, a shark or a dog? Everybody would have said shark. So, it's the same thing. What are you afraid of, the vaccine or the vaccine preventable disease? They're afraid of the vaccine or the potential vaccine adverse event that doesn't exist, that's unreal, like the cows growing out of arms and stuff, okay? So, autism is one of the big ones. Let me just say it clear. There is no link between autism and vaccines, period. What happened here is there was a horrible conflict of interest that Wakefield, the guy that started all this nightmare, had. He actually wanted to create his own measles vaccine that was going to compete against the current one. That's why he did all this. And basically, to make it story short, he was going to make a lot of money out of it. The article was retracted, and this just came out in the New York Times June 19th, if any of you saw it. We always wondered where all the money came from. It's millions of dollars. And this is just the tip of the iceberg. Yes, they are being funded by people with money who are anti-vaccine people who help disseminate misinformation on Facebook, on Twitter, on neighbors, and then it just spreads like wildfire because we are bad at math and we fear that concern of the shark when really what we should be afraid of is the puppy. So that's what happens.
Why are these two,
Mm-hmm.
why are those two well-off people anti-vax?
There are well-off people that are anti-vax, and there's not well-off people that are anti-vax. Anti-vax does not discriminate. There's about 1 to 3% of the population that is completely anti-vaccines, and they're scattered everywhere. They do tend to find each other, and there's pockets around the country where you will find more people like that, and so outbreaks are easier to happen. But money doesn't mean that you know better, unfortunately. So that's just to help you read that article. Please pull it up. It's in the Washington Post. And here, just to show you that they said, it's crazy that there's this level of intensity around a trivial childhood illness. If he had just come to this lecture, he would have learned about the triviality of measles and death and hospitalization. And I don't know about you, but to me, it's not trivial to see my child be sick and have pneumonia and be hospitalized and potentially die and not be able to go to work and maybe have the concern of having SSP in the future. That's not trivial to me. The vaccine is trivial. It's one injection, you're done, and you're out the door. That is trivial. Why aren't they making that comparison? Because they're bad at math too. Why aren't they saying the vaccine is trivial? It is. And they're not the only ones. Unfortunately, we have politicians nowadays that also are helping the anti-vaccine movement. Even if they are not themselves part of it, although this dude is, there are others that are not helping. And this is just a study to show to you that autism is not related to vaccines, and I'll just describe it really briefly. Unfortunately, because of Wakefield in Europe, there were a lot of children that were not vaccinated against measles, mumps, and rubella. So they were able to do this study there. They had a population that was not immunized with measles, mumps, rubella, and a population that was. And then they compared the rates of autism on both. And guess what? The same. So hopefully that helps you understand, not related. If measles, mumps, rubella costed, it should have been like this. Same. Now, we have some public figures that have helped us in the past. I have some pictures here of presidents, Republican, Democrat, doesn't matter. This is not about politics. It's about image, and you don't say what to do, you exemplify what you're supposed to do. And now we have our current president tweeting that I'm being proven right about the massive vaccinations, the doctors lied, save our children and their future. We have to fight against that because I'm sorry, but not money, not politics, nothing saves you from not having the correct information inside of your head. So finally, 7:45. I'm going to end really quickly with some questions. Let me see how I get to this one. First, I want to go through this real quick. That's my daughter when she was little. And that's her now. As you can see, yes, it's her favorite t-shirt. I don't know why. So she has grown up. She's 10, and she's alive and well and thriving. She's sassy. I don't think that's due to the HPV vaccine. She was sassy before I gave it to her. And she's going to become a teenager, and she's going to do all teenage things, and it's not related to the vaccine. It's what teenagers do, okay? I gave her the vaccine when she was still holding a teddy bear. It's better than giving it when they're older. In conclusion, vaccines are incredibly safe. There are true adverse events that are mild, and they're in those VIS. You can be informed about them, like yes, it might hurt, yes, you might have a little rash, but nothing that outweighs the risk of the disease itself. And the benefits of vaccines far outweigh the risks. And I want to remind you, close by telling you, we are this close to eradicating polio. Do whatever you can to help the cause. You can see that we also have star power on our side. Yes, I put as many as I could find in there so you can see them, identify your favorite artist, actor, whoever you want. And finally, some good resources for parents. Valid websites are here. And I want to tell you, beware of bad links that look like good ones, such as vaccines.net. That sounds super reliable, right? It's one of the #1 anti-vax websites. So is NVIC, National Vaccine Information Center. No. Good book. And finally, I'm opening up for questions 2 minutes late, but that's because I started 5 minutes late.
I have my hands full. I have a few questions that were written out.
It's like textbooks. Oh my God. I see those cards there.
Yeah, one's on both sides.
Yeah.
Our live stream viewers, just type in your question either on Facebook or livestream.com, and we'll read them to Dr. Pahud. Anyone else, just write your questions. We'll come by and collect them. And I have pencils if you need them.
Oh yes, he's carrying those pencils and reading at the same time. Okay, I hope I can do this. What's in a vaccine? Ooh. See, that was like a whole bucket. Should we do another talk one day? So in short, there's 3 main things, although there's more that are in a vaccine. One is the antigen, so the virus or bacteria that you're trying to protect against. So it's a piece of it usually. So let's pretend this is pneumococcus. This is the pneumococcus bacteria. So I'm going to grab just the outer piece of the pneumococcus, and this is what your body sees and recognizes and attaches to and fights when you get infected. So I'm going to get rid of the rest of it, and I'm going to make a vaccine out of this. So I'm going to put it inside of this nice little vial, and that's going to become a vaccine. And along with it, because it's such a small little piece, I'm going to throw something in there to prevent it from sticking to the sides. Because if this sticks, and I give you this vaccine, you really got nothing, right? So I'm going to put stuff in there to help it actually float into the vaccine and be delivered to you, and something to help this not get infected every time somebody opens it up, and to be able to tolerate the heat and the cold of transportation and all those things. So those are the things that are in vaccines. You've heard of alum, you've heard of mercury. All those things are the additives that help the vaccine stay safe in there, or that help me, instead of putting a big chunk of this vaccine piece, I can take a smaller amount of antigen and bind it with alum. And if it's bound to alum, let's pretend this is alum, it's big, and the body can recognize it faster and attack it better, and it creates a better immune response. So that's what's in a vaccine. That was your whole bucket in a minute. All right. What is the harm of giving fevers back? What is the harm in giving fewer vaccines? Oh, thank you. What's the harm of giving fewer vaccines or spreading them out or skipping them? A lot. Because basically when parents come to me and they're like, could we just give 2 or 3? I'm like, okay, which disease would you rather your child have? Tetanus? Meningitis? No, I'm not going to make that choice. I'm here to protect your child against all of them. And 1 extra shot is way better than pneumococcus, meningitis, hospitalization. No, you're going to get all of them. I'm not going to cherry pick. We have these vaccines. We worked really hard to protect your children. You need them all. And there's a schedule for a reason, to protect your child. And we both want the same thing. So I know you're trying to protect your child, but so am I. But we're doing this. So there is a lot of danger, because you leave your child exposed to that disease if you don't protect them against it. It's as simple as that. Why is Shingrix, new shingles vaccine, better than the old one? Oh my God, I love that vaccine. Thanks for asking that. So we have some experience with that vaccine. It hurts. That vaccine does hurt. I have some members in the audience that are saying, yep, it hurts. And I know it hurts, but you know what? I'm sorry. Having herpes zoster hurts more. Who has had herpes zoster here? Okay, I want you two to argue at the end and see who wins. I'm sure whoever had herpes zoster is going to be like, you had nothing. How long did you guys hurt? 2, 3 days, whatever, I don't know. Even if it was a week, it doesn't compare to the pain of post-herpetic neuralgia from herpes zoster, so it's worth it. The new vaccine is better because the old vaccine was a virus, basically, that the way that I describe it to my residents, it's a real virus, and it's attenuated, meaning I'm giving you the whole virus, not a piece of it, but I'm making it kind of stupid so that it can't really harm you. So it's like I'm putting blindfolds and I'm making them drunk and I'm tying them up. So it is the virus, but it really can't do that much. But the new vaccine is a piece. So this is always better if it's more immunogenic, if it creates a better immune response than the actual virus tied up. Because the actual virus will still cause the disease in a milder form, but it will still cause it. So it's a better vaccine, but it is more reactogenic. All right. Why doesn't the federal government make immunizations for adults and children as a national? I know. Why aren't they giving it? Yeah, it should be a national security issue. Thank you. Let's just start like marching from here into Washington. We won't stop until we get there. I agree with you. As a senior, I remember actual polio, measles, rubella, mumps, pertussis. Yeah, of course. And people that died from varicella. Do you think the non-vaccine people just don't remember how it was? They don't remember because I am going to guess they don't read, because the data's out there and they're not reading it. So if they're not reading science, they're not reading history either. So they don't believe that the diseases were there. Or like the person who was in the ICU for 3 months and saw the disease, they still prefer that over the vial. I can't explain that. That's the 1 to 3%. But if we keep it at 1 to 3%, we're fine. It's the other people that are skipping, delaying. If we get all those people back on board the train, we'll be fine. We can live with 1 to 3% of people that have other problems. We just need to get everybody else truly on board. And I want to relay this urgency of we gotta get on board or we're gonna see these diseases come back. Okay, the next one. What is in a vaccine? Well, I already kind of answered that one. So, oh, yeah. Let's see. What is the harm of, I already did that one, sorry. How does one get into researching new vaccines? Do you have to be an MD? No, you don't have to be an MD. There's a lot of people that are not MDs that research vaccines, so they can be molecular biologist or microbiologist or technician, so anybody that really wants to do it can do it. The way that I got started, I'm not joking, I moved into New York City in 2000, I went to Columbia University, I researched a guy, because I do read, I researched a guy, and I knocked on his door and I said, can I talk to you? And there was this wonderful old man, his office looked like a library full of books everywhere and masks from Africa, and I'm like, I want to be like you when I grow up, and I want to work with vaccines, what do I need to do? He's like, if you want to work with vaccines, probably a pediatrician, you probably need an MPH. And guess what I did? Chun, 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 chun. I did all those things, and then I decided to become infectious diseases too. But yeah, you can work in any of these things. If you've had measles, does that give you lifetime immunity? In theory, yes. And the reason why I say in theory is, unfortunately, as we age, our immune system declines, all of us. So if you had measles when you were 6, you have immunity from the disease. But just like if you had the vaccine, if you had the disease, that immunity will slowly wane. So it could wane over time, and that's why sometimes we see these herpes zoster outbreaks, because your immunity wanes and herpes zoster comes back out. So all of us have waning immunity. What was the number of people that got measles 1992 at the previous peak? So how many people got measles prior to 1992 is a question. I had that graph, I can pull it back up, but it was lower since vaccine introduction, but it was way more than 1,000. But I can put that slide back up. For areas where anti-vaccine rhetoric is funded by the government, Pakistan, what measures are? So basically the question I think is, what do we do about places like Pakistan to counter? So that's why the WHO put vaccine hesitancy on their list of top 10, because then when they go to talk to people like Bill and Melinda and rich people that have money, they can say these are our top 10 priorities, we need help with this, and they can get more money behind to reach those hard to reach places. And they have a whole plan of attack of what they're going to do to try to, number one, keep those two countries contained, surround them with vaccine. And we actually switched the type of vaccine that we're doing. Do I have 2 more minutes?
Of course.
Okay, so polio, I'm going to explain something really quickly. Polio virus, there's 3 types of polio virus, 1, 2, and 3. Good news, smallpox is not the only disease that has been eradicated from the world. Polio too has been eradicated too. Ooh, ooh. We still have 1 and 3 though, but the vaccine had all 3 of them in there. The problem is there's 2 types of polio vaccines. Oral polio vaccine, the one that you took as drops, and that's a live attenuated vaccine, and dead vaccine, where just the piece of it goes in. So you can now imagine, based on what I've told you, that the live vaccine can cause problems. This dude was really strong, and he took off everything and started causing disease. The vaccine strain. Again, rare. But if you're giving these vaccines to billions of people, if you still just cause 1 case in a million, that's a problem for us because we're trying to eradicate the disease. So we removed this because this was the bully that was causing all those diseases from the vaccine. It was number 2. So we got it out of the vaccine, and now we have a new vaccine that only has 1 and 3. And this vaccine is no longer causing that. But we are still struggling with this dude who got all the ties off and is now circulating in certain areas of the world. And so we're trying to give now dead vaccine against polio 2 and live vaccine against 1 and 3. So there's all this science around it. It's not as simple as it sounds, but it is very strategic to contain the disease to be able to eradicate it in the safest possible way. Okay?
Right, we have an online question, which I need to put on my glasses here. And the question comes from Kim on Facebook. How does resistance to vaccination break down racially, ethnically, and culturally?
So it depends where you're at. For example, I love that people will tell me, oh, I'm traveling to Mexico or Africa, so I think I need to get my shots, right? I'm like, nope, Mexico has better immunization rates than the United States does. So nope, but if you're going to France, beware, because they are the most anti-measles vaccine in the entire world. An article just came out actually today that I didn't have a chance to put in there, showing, it's a report showing how the world feels about vaccines, about a whole bunch of health issues, but one of them was vaccines. And France is the most anti-vaccine country in the world. And you can see like countries like Mexico and Latin America, we're doing better than the US, sorry. So it depends where you're at. Within the United States, there are pockets of under-vaccination that could be very wealthy because they choose not to vaccinate because they believe vaccines are harmful. And there are pockets of under-vaccination because of lack of access, lack of vaccine, lack of doctors. So the problems are very different depending on where you're at. So it's a complicated question to answer. Eastern Europe also has a lot of anti-vaccination right now. The rest is, like in the United States, pockets here and there distributed.
Let's make this the last question. We're up against the hour. It's almost 8 o'clock. What made you, you touched on this a little bit, what made you so interested and inspired to pursue a career in vaccines?
So it all started when I was a little girl. No, I'm kidding. When in Mexico, we go to medical school straight out of high school. So just like here at UMKC. So I was 17 when I started medical school. And when we are in medical school in Mexico, doctors, nurses, dentists, we all work for the government 1 year after you graduate. That's your way of paying back. And you get sent out to the middle of nowhere to take care of a town or something. And also throughout your training, you help out with any government-driven campaign. So in Mexico, we do something called sweep campaigns for vaccines. So talk about over-vaccination. We over-vaccinate the bejesus out of every Mexican. I mean, we just go and like, swoop, everybody's getting measles vaccine today. We don't care because we want to make sure we don't have measles outbreaks. And everybody's fine, that nothing happens. I mean, I've gotten, I don't know how many doses of measles, polio, varicella. I stopped counting a long time ago. So my first time volunteering as a medical student, I was 17, 18, and they sent me to this like slump in the outskirts of Mexico City, and you just get there with your little cooler, and that one was polio, but we do polio or measles, depends. That one was polio. So we had our our coolers and our vaccine, and you need to just give the drops to the kids. So those were really easy because you don't hurt them, so they like you. And I was just amazed by how people welcomed us. We just sat there, and then all of a sudden there was a chair, and then there was coffee, and then there was sweet bread from Mexico, and people came out to thank us for being there. And all of a sudden I felt like they were hosting us, and we were supposed to, we still immunized everybody, but I just felt such appreciation from the people for us giving our time to give them this life-saving vaccine, that I was like, this is what I want to do with the rest of my life. I'm just going to do something related to vaccines. I don't care what, but I know that's what I'm doing. So that's how I ended where I am. Yeah. Well, thank you very much for coming.
And thank you, Dr. Pahud, for just a wonderful lecture. And again, thank you for attending our program tonight. Go to lindahall.org to sign up for future events. Thank you and good night.